Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. I'm returning to you for a decent to good albums of 2022 part 5 video that I'm doing for you guys for the part 5 video to continue where I left off from the last video, which I left off at number 21, and it'll lead to whatever number I get to, maybe close to the top 10, of course. So I'm going to discuss from 21 to whatever number I get to for decent to good albums of 2022 part 5 video that I'm doing for you guys this afternoon and let you know my thoughts on it, on each album, of course. So let's dive into this decent to good albums of 2022 part 5 video, the official end of the year video. Now at number 21 is Rina Sawayama with Hold the Girl. Now I actually enjoyed Minor Feelings. That was actually a pretty interesting intro to the album. A good introduction to start the album, and then Hold the Girl comes next after that, which is pretty interesting of an album. And there were some other songs on here like Hold Me Till You Let Me Go. Holy Till You Let Me Go, I meant to say. That was actually a pretty good song. Some of the mixing could have been a little worked on, but still a good track. And Your Age has grown on me a bit more, but some of the production in it is solid. But Imagining was not my personal favorite, but it was decent in its own way. Rina Sawayama's vocals in it are just a little wonky at times. But Frankenstein was a good one that I enjoyed after that song. And then there was other songs like Catch Me in the Air, This Hell, and Phantom was a pretty good song close to the end of the album. To Be Alive was pretty good, and there were quite a bit of songs like Hurricanes was pretty strong, and some other ones like Send My Love to John was a pretty solid track. So there was pretty interesting songs on this Hold the Girl album. So it was a good album. It just took a little time to grow on me, this album, because there were some songs I wasn't sure if I was connecting with, but I remember listening to this and being like, it's pretty interesting of an album. So she did a good job on this album. Even though I gave it a 7.5 when I reviewed it, I just think it's worth being in my top 30, of course. So at number 21 is Rina Sawayama with Hold the Girl. Number 20 is Seether with Si Vis Pacem Parabellum Deluxe Edition. Now this was a good listen for the Deluxe Edition, but they kind of are mellowing out with some of their stuff, and some moments in the album, I don't know if it sounds good for certain Deluxe Edition songs, but Seether is a good band. But Si Vis Pacem Parabellum was probably solid. It was a good album in its own way, so not the best thing I've listened to. Like What Would You Do was probably my least favorite on the album, and then there were some other ones that I think were fine on the album. So basically, the deluxe edition, I'm only talking about the deluxe edition. I've already heard the regular edition, which has grown on me a lot more. But I wouldn't say it's the best thing I've listened to. So number 20 is Seether with Si Vis Pacem Parabellum Deluxe Edition. Alright, and number 19 is Calvin Harris with Funk Wav Bounces Volume 2. Now this album has grown on me a bit more after re-listening to it some of the time. I haven't really returned to it that much, but I remember it being average at the time. But as of now, I think it's a good album. It just has some songs I'm on the fence with, meaning on the cringe side with. But for what it went for, Calvin Harris produced this album good in its own way. So at number 19 is Calvin Harris with Funk Wav Bounces Volume 2. I can't remember every song from it, but I remember some at least. Not every one of them, to be honest. Potion was a pretty strong track off the album, with Dua Lipa and Young Thug. Even though Young Thug kind of ruined the song a bit, unfortunately, I still think Dua Lipa did good as the featured artist of the song and carrying a good chorus. So, a catchy chorus too. So, yeah. Number 18 is Jack White with Entering Heaven Alive. Now, this was a good album for what it went for. I remember listening to it back in late July, and this was he released 2 albums this year, along with Red Hot Chili Peppers too. They released 2 albums this year as well. So there were a couple artists and bands that were releasing albums twice this year. So basically, I think Entering Heaven Alive was a good listen. It was more of a melodic rock album, but it did pretty well with what it went for, because he wanted to make this an all rock album and have some experimentation, but still stick to the rock side of things. But it still was a good album with certain songs off here I liked, and then some songs I had my critiques about. So at number 18 is Jack White with Entering Heaven Alive. Alright, at number 17 is Simple Plan with Harder Than It Looks. Now, this was a good listen. I know ARTV did a review off this. I don't think he reviewed it, but I remember him putting it on his worst albums list that he just made a video for yesterday, which that's fine. He's entitled to his own opinion. Sorry for my yawning. He's entitled to his own opinion, of course, but I personally think it was a good album. It's not the best album or the good album of the year, but it's in the top 20, for me at least. But 2 was a pretty interesting song. Um, Slow Motion was a pretty good one. That's the song I was trying to think of while I was slurring my words. Wake Me Up When This Nightmare's Over was pretty good. Anxiety being my least favorite, unfortunately. And Iconic being another least favorite. That's decent, but not great, in my opinion. Best Day of My Life was a pretty strong track for sure. Really liked it. It leads into the last 2 songs, which is Slow Motion and 2, which are the best tracks to close this whole 34-minute album. But I think this album was good. Despite my critiques about Anxiety and Iconic, I still think it was a good listen. So definitely recommend checking it out for yourself to see what you think of it. But if it's not for you, then it's not for you. So at number 17 is Simple Plan with Harder Than It Looks. Number 16 is Camila Cabello with Familia. Now, Psycho Freak was not my favorite song, in my opinion. It had some weird moments. I know John from ARTV put it on his worst songs of 2022. I'm like, that's fine. Even though Willow carried a good vocal range in the track, I think some of the track is on the fence with me. Like, it's good or bad. It depends. And Don't Go Yet was pretty strong of a track. It was solid, but not the best. Bomb Bomb was decent, but has some weird moments in it. So I wouldn't say this album was the best, but it is good in its own way, because it has other tracks on here that I did personally enjoy. So basically at number 16 is Camila Cabello with Familia. Alright, at number 15 is Swedish House Mafia with Paradise Again. Now, this was a good listen, for sure. I did enjoy certain tracks off this album, but I can't remember every song from here. It was like I think it's a 17-track album, if I remember correctly. But I did remember enjoying it, for sure. So, at number 15 is Swedish House Mafia with Paradise Again. I think it's a good album in its own way. Some production on here can be a little wonky at times with how it sounds with certain songs, but other than that, the album did perform good in its own way. Number 14 is Swedish House I said it wrong again. Number 14 is Earl Sweatshirt with Sick. Sorry that I said Swedish House Mafia again. Please forgive me on that. I screwed up there. Earl Sweatshirt did have a good album this year. It was a 10-track album, but it wasn't very long. I think it was like 26 minutes or so, something like that, if I remember correctly. But it did perform good in its own way. So definitely recommend checking it out. There's some tracks on here that are a little on the fence with me, but I think it's a good album in its own way. So at number 14 is Earl Sweatshirt with Sick. Alright, at number 13 is Stormzy with This Is What I Mean. Now, I just recently reviewed this album like 2 weeks ago or so. You can definitely go check out my review if you enjoyed it. Because it was a good review. I just had some critiques about this album with how its pacing was going. But other than that, it stayed afloat for a majority of it, and it did perform good in its own way. But I wouldn't say the best album of the year, but something at least. So number 13 is Stormzy with This Is What I Mean. I can't remember every song from the album, to be honest. I think it's like a 12-track album, if I remember correctly. But it did perform alright. So, yeah. Number 12 is Kehlani with Blue Water Road. I did enjoy majority of this album. Everything being my favorite song on here. There were certain other tracks that I did enjoy from this album, but then there were some other songs that were good but could be worked on. In my personal opinion, at least. So I think number 12, Kehlani, Blue Water Road, good album in its own way, but I have my critiques on it. At number 11 is Phoenix with Alpha Zulu. Now, yeah, I was writing it right. Alpha Zulu. The Alpha Zulu title track is on the fence with me, but I think it's catchy in its own way. But the ooh ah singing hallelujah, woo ha singing hallelujah lyric, that lyric is just on the cringe side with me because I don't know if I like it. But other than that, it did perform alright. Tonight was a pretty strong track. The Only One was pretty strong. I've returned to this album multiple times, but I gotta say, it's a good album as of now. It made it almost in my top 10. It's in the top 20, of course. So it was a good album. It just took a little time to grow on me. So I'd give it now an 8 out of 10, for sure. Because it's as good as the Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix album from 2009. So, but still, that album can't. It tops everything, unfortunately, because it was a good album and it had some interesting cuts in certain songs like 1901, Listomania, and Armistice, or something like that. Is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. But basically, The Only One was a good song. There were other ones like Winter Solstice that I did enjoy. The production in it was pretty strong. So, and I think the last song, Identical, was pretty strong of a track. And Artifact was pretty good. Season 2 was a little weird, honestly, but I wasn't sure if I was on board with that one. But I think it did alright. So at number 11 is Phoenix, Alpha Zulu. Their album was good. It just took a little time to grow on me, to be honest. Number 10 is Poppy with Stagger EP. Now this was a good listen. It's only 4 tracks, of course, so it's not very long of a EP, of course, but it's something at least. So definitely check my review out when you get the chance. It came out October 14th. I think you might enjoy it for what it went for what I went for with that review, of course. But for what it was, I think it was a good EP. There were certain tracks I wasn't sure if I was on board with, but it's not her best extended play she released to date, but it's something. So at number 10 is Poppy with Stagger EP. Alright, at number 9 is RM with Indigo. Now, we're in the top 10 now, just letting you guys know, and hopefully you'll enjoy the top 10. I think Indigo had some good cuts, like Yun and Still Life was pretty solid, and Hectic was probably my favorite. It's grown on me a little more, but I haven't really returned to the album since I listened to it recently. So definitely check this album out when you get the chance. It's a good album for sure by RM. He's the rapper from BTS, of course, so definitely check out his new album. It came out December 2nd of this year, so not that long ago, like 9 days ago, I believe. So at number 9 is RM with Indigo. Alright, at number 8 is, trying to look for number 8 to be honest, The Pretty Reckless with Other Worlds. Now, this was a good, I guess, compilation album is what they're calling it, but it had some tracks like Got So High that was a little solid but had some weak moments. I think the remix one was pretty solid, or it was pretty good if I remember correctly. I can't remember, but the original track itself is still my least favorite in my opinion, but it's something at least, so I definitely recommend checking it out for yourself to see what you think of it. 25 acoustic, I'm just not feeling for that song still. I think it's alright, but it's not great with Taylor Momsen singing in it. And there's other tracks like uh, Harley Darlin. I think when I heard the Death by Rock and Roll album, it was solid, and Only Love Can Save Me Now acoustic was pretty solid for what I went for. So I highly recommend you check it out for yourself to see what you think of it. So at number 8 is gonna be Pretty Reckless with Other Worlds. That's going to be it for this end of the year video for part 5 of Decent to Good Albums of 2022 video. I will be returning to you for the final part, which will be from 7 to 1 on what I mentioned for the next videos, of course. But until then, stay safe. Take care, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Decent to Good Albums of 2022 part 5 video. I do got to run some errands after this next video I finish up on. But as always, I will see you in my next video.